My name is Bakari Height, and I'm the co-founder of the MARTA Army. For those of you who don't know, the MARTA Army is a nonprofit that works to create scalable projects that will not only enhance the MARTA system, but also enhance the commutes of its passengers. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Transit Equity Day, it's a collaborative effort of transportation-based organizations and unions nationwide to promote public transit as a civil right. And what better day to promote it on the birthday of one of the bravest figures in civil rights and transportation, Ms. Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks pushed the idea of allowing all to have just, efficient, and equitable access to transportation. And we at MARTA Army follow in her footsteps that every project we do and allow all of you to take part in executing. Before we move on, we would like to thank our partners who all helped make this day possible. The Atlanta Bicycle Coalition, Georgia Stand Up, iAccess Life, Partnership for Southern Equity, PEDS, the Sierra Club of Georgia, and the Transformation Alliance. We would also like to thank the Labor Network for Sustainability for making sure that we continue this tradition right here in Metro Atlanta. All of our partners have demonstrated the need for more equity in their respective lines of work and operate tirelessly around the clock to make sure that every person has fair representation in this life, no matter how they show up to the occasion. Today we'll have a few words from our partners and also debut MARTA Army's newest initiative that we'll be working on with their help. We hope you will enjoy today's festivities, and we thank you again for the support. So without further ado, we'll go on to our first presenters, Georgia Stand Up.
Morning. Happy birthday, Rosa Parks! Yeah! So my name is Deborah Scott. I'm the Executive Director of Georgia Stand Up, and we are excited to be here today and happy to join in the festivities today. But we really want to make sure that we realize that this is an equity issue. It's not just about transportation. It's about getting people where they need to go in a timely manner, and then making sure that everyone has access to public transportation that is healthy, efficient, and collaborative. I'm going to turn it over to our colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to first begin with a quote from Rosa Parks as we celebrate her 107th birthday. She once said, "I knew someone had to take the first step, and I made up my mind not to move." Greetings, my name is Imani Southerland, and I am ecstatic to be here to represent Georgia Stand Up. A little bit about Georgia Stand Up. We are a think and act tank for working communities. One of our main priorities, aside from economic development and community organizing, is transit equity. Our mission is to be able to provide resources to help create healthy and livable neighborhoods, and a major concern that we have includes the inconsistent routes. Today, although 78% of MARTA riders are Black, many Black residents still struggle to access the city bus lines, which fail to stretch deep enough into the Black suburbs. We've realized that there are barely any sidewalks to walk on, and we should be focusing on our legacy residents who's been here and who's been waiting for change. Many of them use MARTA to get back and forth to and from work, but there aren't enough routes to accommodate them, nor are there enough routes in their neighborhoods. The demographic changes and the new tax dollars in Georgia have created an environment in which public transit can finally flourish in this city. But we, like Rosa Parks, just have to take that step. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Destiny Collins, and I also have the honor to represent Georgia Stand Up alongside Ms. Imani Southerland. So living in the city of Atlanta, transit is a necessity for one to involve themselves in everyday life. And throughout my college career, I had the opportunity and a great experience of riding MARTA. I'm a recent graduate of Georgia State University, and so something that is, thank you. And a great thing about Georgia State University is that we have 3 MARTA stations within walking distance to and from dorms and main campus. So we have the 5 Points station, we also have our Peachtree Center station, and the Georgia State station. And throughout my tenure at school, I realized that there was a difference just going to and from work. So if I wanted to go back home to Suwanee, I would have to take the either Peachtree Center station, the Gold Line, all the way up to Doraville, or I could take the 5 Point station. Or, I realized that as I was riding throughout the stations that there's a discrepancy and a difference in the resources and just opportunities from, let's say, the Doraville station all the way down to the West End station. If I wanted to go visit my sister who lives in Union City, I would take the station all the way down to College Park and then hop on the 181 bus. But seeing that I can stop in the Buckhead station or Lenox station and walk out to music and art and restaurants and just shopping centers and all different resources, I think it's something that is very important that we afford that same opportunity to other folks further north or further south that take MARTA. This is a necessity for African Americans throughout all communities just to come and use a mode of transportation. It's something that is important to us, and everybody should be afforded the opportunity to have a safe, reliable transit system that gets them to and from their place of work or their place of home. So this is something that is very, very important to us, and we thank you all for allowing us to be here today just to speak about just transit equity and what it means to us as young adults, as older adults, parents, grandparents, and students. Thank you so much.
Now we'll have a word from Atlanta Bicycle Coalition.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Serna, and I'm the Executive Director at the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition. Just recently, in December, we adopted a new strategic plan. And that plan calls for us to become a new organization that is invested in sustainable transportation. And that includes, most importantly, transit. So we're really excited to be embarking on this new day and working more collaboratively with all of the great organizations here that have been working on transit for years and years. Our new vision is an Atlanta where everyone moves safely, easily, and sustainably throughout the city. And we're doing this by reclaiming streets for people as safe, inclusive, and thriving spaces for people to walk, ride, and roll. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the inequities in transportation safety. Just 8% of Atlanta's streets account for 88% of traffic fatalities. And those streets are not spread evenly throughout the city. No, they're concentrated in the areas west of Northside Drive and south of I-20. The location of this high injury network of streets is the result of structural racism in our society. Our historically redlined communities have much fewer sidewalks, and they have people who are dependent on transit for transportation. These are the same folks that Deb referenced earlier that are waiting 2 hours or spending 2 hours in transit just to get one way. This is the type of transportation that should be the easiest, it should be the highest quality, and it should be the most accessible to people throughout Metro Atlanta. Yet we're making it hard on people. These are the folks that are invested in our transportation system. They are not contributing to climate change in the same way that those who are driving at higher rates are. And they are longtime Atlantans who deserve good quality transportation. I lived on public transportation for a year. I didn't have a car, couldn't afford a car, and I learned a little bit of what it's like to be dependent on MARTA in Atlanta today. There are parts of Atlanta where it works pretty well. You're in Midtown, downtown, and then there are parts of Atlanta where it's a huge challenge. And going back to the safety component of it and this high injury network, when you're standing outside waiting for the bus, when you're crossing a fast 4-lane, 5-lane street with no safe crosswalk, you are exposed to these high speeds and you're exposed to greater risk. And that comes home to root when people are killed crossing the street, literally just to get to the bus, whether it's a school bus, J.J. Wallace on Hollowell Parkway, or a MARTA bus. And a disproportionate number of crashes occurred because people are crossing the street to get to the bus. We learned that from PEDS research a couple of years ago. When you're crossing the street to get to the bus and your bus comes every 45 minutes, once an hour, you're more motivated to cross the street quickly, and you're, again, more exposed to risk. That's why we've embarked on a campaign to reduce the speed limit in the city of Atlanta to 25 miles per hour, because that slight reduction in speed can save lives. It will save lives and it will make a difference. So thank you all for being here today. All of your work in transit and equity is something that we need desperately in Atlanta today, and we really need to come together and work on this. Otherwise, we won't really have a successful future in Atlanta. So I want to close and let you know that there's an opportunity later today to stand up for transportation, to stand up for transit equity. There's a hearing in the Senate Transportation Committee at 4 p.m. today in the CLOB building in room 310. And I've tweeted it from the Atlanta Bike Twitter account if you want to find out more information. There's a referendum potential that would allow us to use the gas tax for public transportation. It's been introduced on the Senate and the House sides. If this were to pass, we would have the opportunity to then fight statewide level to get access to our gas tax, our public dollars, and use them for public transportation. It's long overdue. So I encourage you to come to Senate Transportation Committee at 4 p.m. today. Bring your Breeze cards so they know what we're there for, and stand up for transit equity. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Kirsten Cook. I am here representing the Partnership for Southern Equity. Transit Equity Day is important to us because the Atlanta region's inadequate state of transportation infrastructure, access, and funding exists largely as a result of a legacy of detrimental policies deeply rooted in race and class. Over 85% of Metro Atlanta's poor live in suburbs without rail and many without bus options. Job centers in the region are concentrated north of I-20 and are therefore difficult to access, if not completely out of reach, for the disproportionately transit-dependent low-income populations and people of color who live south of I-20. Ranking 91st of 100 largest metro regions for job access via public transit, Atlanta needs to continually expand and improve our transit system in order to connect low-income communities and people of color to economic opportunity. However, largely due to lingering racial fears and prejudice, opportunities for MARTA expansion and increased transit funding are repeatedly resisted in many metro communities. Atlanta's inequitable racialized past is not simply a justice issue. It's made matters worse for the region as a whole. Because of continued votes against transit expansion, the region deals with significant traffic and air quality problems that will only worsen as a couple million more people move to the region in the next 20 years. And we sacrifice great economic potential when residents physically cannot reach job destinations. As a racial equity organization, the Partnership for Southern Equity has worked since its founding to offer equitable and innovative approaches to regional transportation in several ways. By advocating for bus and rail transit expansion in communities that rely on it, by developing and implementing leaders academies to assist residents in getting involved in pushing for transit investment in their communities in such a way that does not displace legacy residents who live there, and by collaborating with partners like the Transformation Alliance who understand that equity is the superior growth model. We're excited to stand here today with these partners as well as some of the resident leaders who you will get to hear from in a moment who have been a part of our academies. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Sheffield, and to get here today I had to ask several people how to buy a Breeze card. I had to ask them how to get on a train. It took me 3 people to be able to get to this point. Because basically, even though I'm going through a rough patch in life right now, and I have less than $25 in the bank, I'm a privileged white woman. And so I get places with no problem at all. But in College Park, I stand up for people that live with what I'm going through every day. In College Park, we hear all about the need to get people from other areas to the airport quickly, conveniently, and with few delays. But we rarely ever hear about the mother on Godby Road struggling to run and catch this hour's bus so she can connect with a train and another bus to make it a few miles away to get medical care for her sick child. I see this happen all the time. Or the family walking miles or hitching rides in cars simply to buy groceries outside the transportation and food desert in which they live. And you never hear about the formerly homeless senior woman living in permanent supportive housing that wants to improve herself so much that every Saturday, and this is a real woman, takes a a train and then scurries on foot for about a quarter of a mile to get to her community building class, a journey that takes her 2.5 hours on a good day. But in my car, it takes me less than 4 minutes. She came every day to the class that I was teaching, every Saturday to the class that I was teaching, and it took me 4 classes to realize what she was going through to make it. But she graduated, and she has continued to grow in her involvement in the community. MARTA, it takes time that it's time that MARTA addresses, at a bare minimum, the workers that they serve, clean up after, and are virtually invisible to the riders it celebrates. I ask you to please always remember that people like me occasionally have to take the train. People like me choose to take the train because we're cool and because it's groovy and we can be like so pro environment. But I work with people every day who have no choice. And when that child is there with 103 temperature and your only choice is to stand in the cold and catch a bus and a train and another bus to get to Grady, there's something wrong with that. I ask that you stand up every day and remember them. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As we come today, you've heard from several of the speakers. They talked about access. They talked about being able to have jobs south of I-20. They talked about how redlining is still affecting communities today. I'm a longtime resident of Atlanta, and I've lived in several places, and I've seen how families have had challenges to reach their destinations. I believe that transit equity is for all. We can do this, but it's going to take an intergenerational conversation, and our leaders and the MARTA board has to reflect the communities that they serve. This is not rocket science, but it is going to take a collective effort so that we can have outcomes that are sustainable. Transit equity for all is not just about those who can easily access it. We're listening to those who may have issues, right? We know there are communities that are not ADA accessible, right? And when we ride by, and as long as it's not affecting us, we don't say much. But I ask all of you to talk to your friends and your leaders in your communities about the votes. Many of the residents are voting to have better access to transit in their communities. As a Climate Reality Corps member, if we increase more cars on our roadways without thinking about other transit opportunities, our health issues will increase. So I ask you all, if you are a believer, if you are a person that knows that we as Georgians, as Metro Atlanta residents, can make the changes that can make Atlanta that great city that we talk about, I ask you all to stand up for transit equity for all and be at the Senate meeting at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Cathy Tyler, and I am the president and CEO of PEDS. And I'd like to thank you all for inviting me here because this is so important. School children should never have to risk their lives while crossing a street to catch a bus to their school and get hit by a speeding car. But sadly, that's what happens in Atlanta. At PEDS, we are advocating every day for more walkable communities and to provide safe access to public transit. We know that walking is a basic human right. And we also know that if more people commit to walking and using public transportation, we would have better air quality, better health, and more engaging social experiences, while at the same time, we would be saving lives from traffic violence. We know that in Metro Atlanta, there are communities with little or no access to public transportation, which puts an added strain on finding or keeping a job. Having access to strong mobility options that connect people to where they want to go or need to go equates to having access to opportunities like employment and education. Public transit, walking, and bicycling all provide strong mobility for those who cannot drive due to disability, age, economics, or just because they like the experience of walking or biking. In 20 years, the aging population is projected to increase by 70%. Atlanta must be prepared for this population by making transit options a priority today. We know that cities around the world are becoming less car-centric, and if Atlanta is to hold on to its identity as an international city, it must do a better job of connecting walking with biking and public transit. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate the support that we all have for this issue. And I'd also encourage you to look at our website, join us, because I think that if we have a bigger coalition, if we show up, we can change things, but we have to stick together. Thank you.
Everybody can hear me? Awesome. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Sava and Morgan and everybody from the MARTA Army for putting this on, and for you guys for showing up and being us. It takes strength in numbers to make a change and to be taken seriously. My name is Brandon Winfield. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called iAccess Life. We allow users to rate and review locations based on their accessibility. It can be anybody. It can be an advocate, be a paraplegic, have a limb missing, whatever it is. We encourage everybody to join our platform and start making a difference. A lot of my experience with transportation has to do with taking the train. Fortunately, I'm able to drive as well, but those days when I do take the train, it tends to be something that I know Karthik definitely had an experience this morning of not being able to hop on an elevator to get here, and that's just, unfortunately not acceptable. I know things happen, but these things put us in really precarious positions of having to figure something out, and the whole idea behind iAccess Life came because I was in the hospital and I got to meet a lot of people in rehab that had given up on life. They didn't know what to do next, or if they could continue to do things that they used to do. And I think the common misconception of people with disabilities is that we don't like to go out and have fun and partake in everyday activities that everybody else does, but that couldn't be further from the truth. We contribute a lot, about $43 billion a year in travel and leisure, because we tend to travel with companions. And I just hope that we start to take these things into consideration about us getting around. I mean, these streets out here are crazy. I don't know how many potholes I hit on my way here. The sidewalks are broken down as well, and I always tell my friends and everybody that I meet that I love Atlanta. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, and I think it's time for us to take that next step in making it a more walkable city or rollable city for us to get around and participate in all the wonderful things that Atlanta has to offer for us. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Brandon. My dream for equitable Metro Atlanta transit consists of smoothly paved sidewalk on the bus stops and surrounding area so I can board safely in my wheelchair. 24/7 wheelchair accessible rideshare so I can go anywhere at any time. And solar powered cable cars, they're called J-Pods, so we can transform a CO2 emitting car first world into sustainable, scalable transit. I dream of not having to plan over an hour to get anywhere in Metro Atlanta, as the only wheelchair accessible transportation consists of taking a train, bus, rolling at least half a mile on broken sidewalks, rerouting around missing curb cuts and full street closures, pushing e-scooters out of the way of path of travel, and backtracking when transit elevators like this morning are broken. I envision a future where I can go bar hopping with friends like Brandon, and we can stay out late on a Friday night and be able to safely get home by calling a wheelchair accessible J-Pod ride, or roll safely to a bus stop that is well lit and safe so I can get back home in the dark without being catcalled. Because current offerings such as MARTA isn't 24/7, and the only wheelchair taxi requires at least 48 hours in advance to book a ride, only between 9 to 5. As an accessibility advocate, I stand for my friends who face other challenges of transit. And I dream for them that there are tactile guide strips laid down to aid riders who have low vision to guide them to the bus stop, and audio overlays announcing arrivals for riders who are hard of hearing. We can build an inclusive transit for all. My name is Karthik. I'm an Atlanta native, wheelchair roller, accessibility advocate, full-time MARTA rider, and sidewalk roller. And I'm just a millennial thriving in my best life. Together, we rally today to honor Rosa Parks' legacy and continue to break down barriers in order to provide transit equity. Transit that is sustainable, affordable, accessible, reliable, and safe for the entire community. Thank you for being here, and now I'm going to turn it back over to MARTA Army because we're going to discuss the way that we're going to create change. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Morgan Jacobus. I'm a volunteer at MARTA Army. I have the honor and privilege of introducing MARTA Army's latest initiative, Operation Bus Stop Census. As our partners have shared this morning, the rising income inequality, changing climate, and lasting effects of racism underscore the need for safe, reliable, accessible, and sustainable public transportation. The lack of funding and regional-wide support for MARTA and transit in general has over time produced a transit system that struggles to connect many people in Metro Atlanta to places where they can live, work, worship, and play. On Transit Equity Day, we were reminded that these failures disproportionately impact low-income communities, people of color, and people with disabilities, groups who are often disenfranchised by the political decision-making process that shapes our transportation network. As Metro Atlanta grows, one thing is clear: we must improve transit for all, and in particular for the most vulnerable and marginalized among us. If we do not, everyone will suffer. We will suffer in the form of lost economic potential and crippling congestion. We will also suffer in the form of disjointed communities and the needless traffic injuries and death. But it does not have to be this way. Nearly half of all daily MARTA trips in Atlanta are taken by bus. These trips start and end at a bus stop. Bus stops are the first line of hospitality in our transit network. It matters how they look and how they feel. However, many bus stops in the Metro Atlanta area lack basic features that give access, protection, and dignity to those who use them. Basic features like a bench to sit on after you've walked a quarter of a mile or rolled a quarter of a mile to the bus stop. Well, I guess you're already in a chair. Features like a shelter to stand under to protect yourself from the rain or from the sun. Like a paved path or sidewalk that allows you to access the stop in a wheelchair. Understanding the gap between the needs of riders and existing conditions of bus stops is the first step toward making meaningful and effective change and improvements to our transit network. This is where Operation Bus Stop Census comes into effect. Similar to the United States Census, the mission of Operation Bus Stop Census is to provide quality data on the condition and amenities of bus stops and their impact on riders. These data include everything from the presence of benches, trash cans, and shelters, to the state of crosswalks leading to the stop. We will catalog the key safety and accessibility features of MARTA bus stops to better inform advocacy efforts and to raise the standards of bus access in the region. Our goal over the next 6 months is to collect data from at least 25% of the over 9,000 MARTA bus stops in the Metro Atlanta area. The data we crowdsource will give advocates, stakeholders, and government leaders a better understanding of how the public experiences bus transportation. The question remains, how do we plan to collect data from over 2,000 bus stops in the Metro Atlanta area? As MARTA Army has done in the past, we will do so by seeking the help of the general public. Using your smartphone, anyone can go online to www.busstopcensus.com to crowdsource data. The site will lead the user to a map where they can select a bus stop to survey. The survey will also be available in a printable format. More information can be found on our website, martaarmy.org, or on our Facebook or Twitter page. Before we end, I would like to extend a special thanks to 4 people who have been pivotal in making this operation happen. Sid Kodapati, who's designed the website, has made everything work in the back end. Joshua Madwood, who's been great at designing our graphics, and they look beautiful. Becca Karyazis, who's done great in getting everything out about the press conference on our social media. And Sam Bastian has provided logistical support for the press conference today. I'd also like to thank our partners and for MARTA for getting this off the ground and for sharing our vision. I want to thank the MARTA Army Board and their leadership in pursuing efforts like this. And I want to thank transit riders everywhere who push us to fight the good fight for transit equity for all. This concludes the end of our press conference. We will now open up for questions.